To those who parrot the idiotic slogan, "Back British Farming," is this what you're backing? On the 2nd of November 2023, two students of Plumpton Agricultural College travelled from their respective homes in Kent to Ditchling Beacon, a nature reserve located in the East Sussex South Downs. There, they chased, tortured and murdered a defenceless ewe in a prolonged and truly barbarous attack. These vile, pathetic wastes of skin are 22-year-old Leighton Ashby of Beckett Road in Appledore and 20-year-old Oakley Hollands of Mussenden Lane in Forkham. That night, Ashby and Hollands invited two other Plumpton College students, Henry Savell and Layla Goodwin-Crisell, supposedly to look at a dead badger. Why, you might ask, would any well-adjusted person want to drive to another county to look at a corpse? But considering they wish to pursue the type of careers in which bestiality has to be rebranded as husbandry and mutilating animals is a routine practice, it's fair to say these are not well-adjusted people. When Savell and Goodwin-Crisell arrived at Ditchling Beacon, they found Ashby and Hollands attacking the sheep. Hollands chased her down and caught her, before punching, kicking and smashing her head against fencing. Ashby then inserted fireworks into her mouth and anus and blew her up, laughing as he caused catastrophic injuries. Days later, Savell and Goodwin-Crisell reported Ashby and Hollands to the police. It is beyond my comprehension that they stood back and did nothing to help the poor defenceless soul who must have been terrified and in excruciating pain throughout the savage ordeal, which lasted 30 long minutes. Whether they reported the crime out of genuine conscience or fear that they would be implicated should it be otherwise uncovered, we'll never know. Ashby and Hollands were arrested soon after, charged with causing unnecessary suffering to a protected animal, and permanently excluded from Plumpton College, a performative move from an institution that has just celebrated 100 years of teaching students the art of animal abuse. Savell and Goodwin-Crisell were withdrawn from their courses, apparently to safeguard student welfare and protect the integrity of the police investigation. During the course of that investigation, police examined Ashby's phone and found footage of other sheep being attacked at Ditchling Beacon. Holland's phone contained footage of Ashby blowing the ewe up with fireworks, the pair of them laughing throughout, revelling in her terror and agony. Further animal abuse content, including photos of a fox who had been killed and dismembered, and videos of an unidentified person carrying out attacks on both live and dead animals, were also found on Holland's phone, and it was discovered that Ashby had hidden the ear tags of the sheep in the toilets at Plumpton College, keeping them as trophies. On the 7th of August this year, the foul, subhuman scum appeared before Brighton Magistrates Court, where they pleaded guilty to the offence. District Judge Amanda Kelly said it's hard to comprehend how you could both inflict such brutality on a defenceless animal. It was sadistic and utterly barbaric. The maximum prison sentence that a magistrate's court can impose is 12 months, and so prosecutor Joe Lewes argued that the case should be sent to Crown Court for sentencing, where a greater prison sentence could be passed. Judge Kelly agreed, committing the defendants to Lewes Crown Court. Tim Sturmey, defending Ashby, asked for a psych report to be commissioned for his client, as he had not been forthcoming in interviews with probation for pre-sentencing reports, and Robert Gregory, defending Hollands, said his client broke down in tears while discussing the case. I'm sure Ashby was uncommunicative because, like many of his ilk, he's a mentally and emotionally stunted, farm-dwelling shit-kicker with the eloquence and IQ of a potato, barely able to enunciate his own name, never mind account for his depravity. As for Hollands, his tears were not demonstrative of compunction or self-reflection, but his cowardice and his fear of consequences, which I doubt this spiteful, spoilt brat is familiar with. I don't believe a psych report is necessary to determine that this pair are demonic psychopaths completely devoid of all goodness. Their crime is sickening and senseless to the point of absurdity, to the point that even reading about it is traumatizing. I'm tormented by visions of this poor animal collapsing in terror, eyes bulging, guttural screams of pain, helpless and unable to understand why this was happening to her, what she had done to deserve such vicious cruelty. If there were any justice in the world, these satanic freaks would be placed in a field, chased until they were exhausted, beaten to within an inch of their lives and then blown to pieces. That is exactly what they deserve and the punishment that I would choose for them. But unfortunately, under our joke of a justice system, the punishment never fits the crime, and in the eyes of the law, human vermin like Ashby and Hollands have more moral and legal value than their innocent victim. Sentencing for animal cruelty is woefully insufficient. The maximum prison sentence for causing unnecessary suffering to a protected animal is 5 years, which means out in 2.5 years with good behaviour. Whilst most perpetrators of such heinous acts never see a prison cell, getting a slap on the wrist instead, the few that do get banged up receive less time than those incarcerated for posting tweets that upset the professionally offended. This lack of meaningful repercussions, coupled with a police force that rarely investigates offences against animals, means there is little deterrent for the dregs of society who wish to act out their warped fantasies on the most pure-hearted, innocent and vulnerable beings on the planet. It's an outrage that for the last 2 years since committing their atrocity, Ashby and Hollands have been out on bail and free to continue terrorising wild and enslaved animals. For those with such dark, evil psyches as Ashby and Hollands, inflicting suffering on others is a compulsion. It's how they get their kicks, and I've no doubt that in the 2 years they've been free, many other innocent beings have suffered at their hands. Animal rights activists are enraged by society's disdain for animals, and so on the 10th of November, the day of Ashby and Hollands' sentencing, a group of us protested outside Lewes Crown Court to call for the maximum sentence to be imposed. Jail is far too good for these parasites, and many of us would like to see justice in kind, but given Ashby and Hollands are afforded legal protections that animals worth 1 billion of them are not, 5 years imprisonment is the only suitable outcome of those legally available. Their court appearance wasn't listed on CourtServe ahead of the hearing, so we suspected that for some reason or other the sentencing had been rescheduled. We attended anyway, wishing to make our feelings known to the court and to raise local awareness of the case. Court personnel had been expecting us and promptly informed us that the hearing had indeed been relisted for Friday the 19th of December. This gives us more time to rally numbers and gain support, showing the presiding judge that there is a real public interest in the case and a consensus that degenerate scum Ashby and Hollands should receive the maximum possible sentence. There are no mitigating factors here. The pair drove to a neighbouring county to increase their chances of not being linked to the crime, showing premeditation and commitment. Ashby hid the ewe's ear tags, and in an attempt to evade justice, Hollands tried to financially bribe others into lying and helping him dispose of the ewe's body. This demonstrates their awareness of wrongdoing, deceptive nature, and lack of remorse. They only pleaded guilty because the evidence on their own phones irrefutably proved their guilt. Importantly, the level of senseless violence inflicted is extreme, and evidence found on both their phones shows a pattern of animal abuse. I'm certain that Ashby and Hollands pose a serious risk to humans too, as many of the most prolific serial killers had a history of torturing and killing animals. Ashby strikes me as the Ed Gein type, hard of thinking, socially awkward, and a little too close to his mother. Hollands is more of a Ted Bundy, with the hallmark black eyes that reveal a bottomless pit of evil, a soulless psychopath who was probably pulling wings off butterflies by the time he could crawl. Both should have been aborted, and I hope their parents are utterly ashamed of them. Ashby and Hollands' names will never be forgotten, and their depraved cruelty is an indelible stain on their characters and their families. Leighton Ashby and Oakley Hollands have grown up in farming communities of rural Kent, deeply entrenched in a culture of animal exploitation and abuse, where animals are viewed as nothing but resources and commodities at their disposal for pleasure and profit. Both come from wealthy families that have made their money off the backs of animals, which has likely bolstered their sense of entitlement and informed their belief that the lives and bodies of other sentient beings are theirs to do with as they please. The Ashby family, based at Place Farm in Canardington, Ashford, has farmed the area for generations, and disturbingly, they currently have a flock of Romney ewes. They own vast stretches of farmland with numerous properties that they let out to members of the public. They advertise idyllic rural getaways with, in stark contrast, the opportunity to terrorise animals, allowing guests to shoot rabbits and pigeons and fish all year round. The UK is blighted with ugly modern houses and endless development, eating away at our beautiful landscapes and encroaching on natural habitats. And I think it's a travesty that those with dominion over what little green space we have left are almost always people like the Ashbys, who view the animals living there in harmony as targets to be blasted out of the air and dragged from the water. Their pathological bloodlust mars the beauty they claim to celebrate. The Hollands family is based at Speedgate Farm on Mussenden Lane in Forkham, where Oakley Hollands is believed to live. Oakley's father and grandfather owned Speedgate Enterprises, a business centred around the subjugation of animals. They boast that they are one of the leading equestrian retailers in the UK, and their large store serves the equestrian world, the farming sector, and the quote-unquote pet owner crowd, all industries built on domination. They also host dog shows, dressage and show jumping events, exhibitions of animals coerced into fulfilling the vain, narcissistic desires of their human masters. I'm a lifelong advocate for animals and an activist of over 10 years. I was raised in rural Norfolk, surrounded by farmers, horsey people, hunt scum and the like, and know that the mentality of Ashby and Hollands is ubiquitous in these communities. Their livelihoods, their hobbies, their culture and traditions all revolve around exploiting, abusing and killing animals. At best, animals are treated as property with no recognition of their sentience, individuality, wants, needs and fears. At worst, and far more commonly in my experience, these people take pleasure in tormenting them in ways that are unthinkable to most. I've met hundreds of Ashby and Hollands, perverse, deeply malignant, violent oddballs with the exact same look, energy, attitude and mentality. They bask in their own sadistic depravity, wearing it like a badge of honour, and take great satisfaction in the further distress they cause to those of us who care about their victims. The only difference is, unlike Ashby and Hollands, most of them get away with their cruelty, much of which is legal, out in isolated fields, farms and forests, with no one watching, no cameras and no consequences. And while the farming community creates monsters like Ashby and Hollands, society creates the farming community. The sheep they brutalised only existed to be commodified, bred and slaughtered. Whether for her flesh or her wool, her suffering was guaranteed and the result of demand created by non-vegans. When it comes to animal abuse, the law draws a distinction between necessary suffering and unnecessary suffering. But that distinction is arbitrary because humans have no need to eat, wear or otherwise use animals in any way. All animal suffering for human benefit is unnecessary. People eat animals for pleasure, just as Ashby and Hollands brutalised the ewe for pleasure. Their motives differ only in legality and social acceptability, not in moral substance. Animal use is animal abuse, and it will always lead to suffering. Every time non-vegans buy animal flesh or the bodily secretions stolen from them, they financially sustain the very industries and individuals who perpetuate violence and cruelty. For a crime so harrowing, so mindless and abhorrent, all we can do is hope that something good can come from it. I hope the victim's terrible suffering and death breaks through the indoctrination and wakes people up to the fact that she was someone, not something, a being capable of experiencing love, fear, pain, comfort and joy just like us. I hope those who hear her story will extend that recognition to every animal and refuse to participate in their enslavement, abuse and murder in all its unnecessary forms. History will judge how we treated the most innocent and vulnerable. Put your values over convenience and conformity, justice over habit, truth over tradition, and be vegan. You'll only regret that you didn't do it sooner. Ashby Farms Limited and Speedgate Enterprises Limited both have pages on Facebook, and you can leave a truthful review there and on Google. Seeing backlash and reputational damage caused to these businesses may make others think twice before committing offences against animals. I'll post links to the relevant pages in the description. I know that for the easily amused, gawping at pretty lights that go bang is a source of endless fascination, but fireworks are also a source of great suffering for animals. While Ashby and Hollands crime has received a lot of media attention, using fireworks to maim and kill animals happens far more often than many realise. Used as intended, fireworks terrify both wild and domestic animals, causing injuries, displacement and death to millions every year in the UK. Seeing my own dog too scared to leave the house because of the noise of fireworks, undoing all the progress we've made with his crippling anxiety, has been really upsetting and makes me so angry. The sheer entitlement and selfishness of humans knows no bounds. Finally, please join our protest outside Lewes Crown Court on the 19th of December and help us fill up the courtroom and make sure Ashby and Hollands get the reception they deserve. You can find the event details on Facebook and I'll post a link in the description.